Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Hey there, thinkers. Elena here with a little pre-show news bulletin to let you know about a new podcast I've been listening to that I think you just might enjoy. The show is called Why Do We Say That? It is a father and son podcasting duo diving into the etymology and history behind everyday words and sayings in every single episode. And when I say that, they go into multiple phrases in each episode, and it's kind of like a deep dive combo with the discussion about like their understanding and their perception of it, you know, that kind of vibe. And then at the end of every episode, they play a fun game. So in season 1, the game was Word or Not a Word. And now in season 2, it is their world famous game show, What Word Am I? New episodes drop every Tuesday, which is perfect for me because I don't know about you, but my favorite podcasts have a little bit of a schedule lull right around Tuesday. So this is going to fill that slot just perfectly for me. And the show is available on all podcast apps. So go look it up. Why Do We Say That? It is so fun. It's so interesting. And yeah, these are all things that you could Google yourself, but you don't have to anymore because it's somebody telling you about it while you're grocery shopping, while you're driving, while you're walking the dog. And it's just so much fun to listen to this father and son banter and go back and forth and learn new things together. Again, Why Do We Say That? New episodes every Tuesday, and it's available on all your podcast apps. Go give her a listen. Hey there, thinkers. It's me, your girl, your host, Elena Grace, and I'm here today to bring you another brand new episode. As always, I'm thrilled, and I'm especially thrilled today to bring you this because we have a special guest, the one, the only, Mr. Nate Metz. So you may know him as the voice of Constantine Raffinesque on our Halloween episode. You may also know Nate as the CEO and boss man over at Stoveleg Podcasts, our media network. So he's got a lot going on. He has his own shows. He does Mysteries of the Ohio Valley. He's got a new show that he just put out called Reformation Abroad. He is a big component of True Crime Cast. Nate has a lot going on, and I got him to settle down a few weeks ago and spend a little bit of time with me talking about treating yourself and kind of how important that is. So we had a big conversation about it, just the two of us the other day, just talking about how important it is for us personally to kind of prioritize that, but also talking about how treating yourself is kind of made out to be sometimes more than it is. So like more difficult than it is or whatever. So we talk about a lot of the different ways that you can treat yourself, as well as, like I said, the importance of it and how it is part of our lives. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. I think it's important for us to kind of have these fun episodes, especially in the middle of or after heavier ones. And guys, I love covering difficult stuff. I love talking to different people. I love talking to people who have had like really shitty experiences sometimes, because I think that's important for us to remember that those exist and that the world isn't all butterflies and cupcakes. But I also think it's really important to remember, because most of us know the world isn't all butterflies and cupcakes. I think it's also really important to remember that there is still fun in the world, and that's allowed. And not only is it allowed, but I encourage you to have fun, to find the little ways even that you can treat yourself and find little things that make you happy, because that is what this life is all about. So with that being said, please enjoy this episode. Here's Nate.
I am Nate Metz. I run Stove Leg Media, all the podcasts and fun stuff like that. And I am lucky enough to have been able to team up with Elena. I also played the ghost of, what was it, Raffinesque? Was that it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was fun. But it's nice to not throw on that crappy French accent during this conversation. I live in the Cincinnati area. I love red wine, horse racing, and the Cincinnati Reds, all of which break my heart at one point or another, but that's okay. Today we are enjoying a little mimosa action.
Mimosa
in the
Mondays
morning.
in the morning.
Yeah, and I think today we could talk a little mindfulness, a little gratefulness, and about treating yourself, right, Elena?
Exactly. And I'm so excited to have you on for this one, Nate. Once again, as you said, without the accent this time around. Because
yes,
though
I'll save the French stuff for later.
That was such a fun episode to do together, though. Was that our first episode on I've Been Thinking together? Did we do another one? That was our first.
No, that's the first one. Yeah, this is my first actual one as me. This is my debut. This is like we had the soft opening,
yes,
with the Raffinesque thing, launch, and now we have the the hard launch. We're ready to go.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad you're here to talk to me about this, because personally, I think you're kind of a king of treating yourself. And you're not far off in that. I try to live a little bit from time to time, sometimes more often than I probably should, but I love treating myself. It's you only have one life, you got to live it, and that's our topic today, right? That is our topic today, and I think it's the perfect time for it. I really kind of live by treat myself too. I deserve a treat every once in a while, and even if the hardest thing I did today was get out of bed, I deserve a reward for it,
Yeah, I feel like I've been thinking about this for a little bit, and sometimes when I treat myself, I feel guilty. Do you ever feel that way too? You're like,
yes.
I like yesterday, I felt a little bit guilty. I was like, I really should have been doing something. I should have been more productive today, but instead I watched TV and I enjoyed a bottle of wine. Do you feel that too?
I do feel that. It's in the same way, yesterday I was out on a boat with my friends pretty much all day long. We went out in the bay, went all the way out to Crab Island. That was actually a mess this week. It's super windy here in Florida right now. But then we ended up making dinner on the boat out in the bayou. It was beautiful. It was golden. It was perfect, right? And you have those moments where it's just like this beautiful moment of living life. Like that is a treat to be able to do that. And definitely not something that everybody's able to do, right? Get out, enjoy the day like that, and just kind of have no worries for a few hours. Well, except there actually was a point in time where we were worried that we were all going to die. But that goes us back to the Wendy. Anyway, but then at the same time, I made myself so busy yesterday morning getting things done because I knew that I wasn't going to have any other productivity later in the day, right?
You have to kind of plan it out
Right.
sometimes. You have to be a little organized. And I think if you just look ahead and be responsible in taking care of what you have to take care of each and every day, I feel like that should take a little bit of the guilt away of treating yourself.
Definitely. But then, have you ever thought about where that idea comes from of like, I need to be productive, and not in just a basic everyday sense, like take a shower, wash the dishes, make sure the kitchen's clean, whatever, but like feeling that guilt because you're not like you're not making money today, or you're not working on one of your projects or something like that, feeling guilt about not doing these things that you just think you need to do because
Yeah.
society tells you to.
Absolutely. I gotta say that when I look at my parents, my dad is a pilot, and I call him an expensive Uber driver. He's a private pilot, so he flies all over the country into beautiful places.
Yeah.
And spends half of my dad's life has been spent in like California and Florida, because that's where all of the business meetings are.
Right.
Obviously, they're going to be somewhere nice. So when I look at him, and he has a career where he is living his dream, and his dad before him was a public worker in Cincinnati who grinded it out, and his mom grinded it out. My mom, Irish as hell, her whole family grinded it out. Her dad worked at a tire factory up in Dayton for basically his entire life, and her mom was a waitress and did other jobs, and I just look at my parents and how hard they all worked to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And my grandparents, and I'm sure your parents kind of worked hard, and their grandparents.
Yeah.
We look at the people that went before us, and we almost feel, and sometimes we're told by older people that we're not doing enough, right? And I feel like every generation kind of makes fun or criticizes the generation that comes after them. But I feel like when I look at the people that came before me, the guilt comes from there, because I've seen how hard my parents worked to give me an easier life, and I'm sure how hard their parents worked to give my parents an easier life. And I think to myself, what am I doing to make the next generation better? And sometimes then combining that with social media, where I see, and as a man, maybe it's different than women. I know that looking at like eating disorders is something that is a big key issue with a lot of women, some men too, but women, when they see other people on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook stories, things like that, where you see someone that has the body that you want, and people aren't comfortable with that. With men, I feel, especially men, we see guys that are driving nice cars on TikTok that they may not even own. They might just be
Right.
renting them for the video. We see those videos of guys saying, what? Like, you're 25 years old and you don't own a Lamborghini? Like, what is wrong with you? And some of them are kind of funny, and they're so over the top.
And cringy. Yeah.
But some of them, however, when I see people that I know living a life that seems nice, seems fun, they've got a nice house, they've got a kid, we're always looking at the other side of the fence and thinking that the grass is definitely going to be greener without living in their shoes or knowing the situation. And I feel like that just puts unnecessary pressure on us. I don't know how we get through it. I think, again, just being grateful for what we have is a good start, but that's part of treating yourself. You don't have to imagine living that way every day, because that's not real. A lot of that stuff is not real. But for ourselves, if we can just grab a little bit of that luxury from time to time to give us a taste and keep us motivated and refreshed, that's the key. I think there could be some positive things that come out of recreation.
No, you're absolutely right about that. So sometimes I learn or am reminded of really important coping mechanisms, like through TikTok or through Instagram, right? And one in particular that I have recently been reminded of and started working more on living by, and it has really helped me out, is, you don't get the life you want by not living it. So, for example, I read a funny tweet one day or whatever from this woman who was like, I was eating my breakfast of cubed cheese and honey drizzled figs and cut salami. And my boss walked up behind me and said, "Why do you eat like a Roman emperor?" And I thought that was hilarious. I thought my delivery on that wasn't great, but I thought that was hilarious. And I was like, I want to eat like a Roman emperor, like just randomly whenever I want, right? So I thought about that for so long, and I was like, man, I wish that I could afford to do that. And then I realized, first of all, I can afford to get, me personally, I can afford to get a thing of Baby Bell cheese, some grapes, like some strawberries, and some cut salami, right? I can afford to do that, and I can have little mini charcuteries for lunch just randomly throughout the week. That is a treat. That's such a treat, and it's such a small thing to do for yourself. And so that's one of the things that I've been doing recently, that it's just kind of like giving myself a break from the normal monotony of, oh, I have to meal prep, I have to do whatever, because that's what I do. I meal prep and I take my lunch to work, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes that's tiring, and sometimes I get bored of all of that. So making myself a tiny little charcuterie in my dumb little bento box I got from Target, like, that is a treat for me, and it breaks it up, and it makes things a little bit more fun and a little bit easier.
Rick Childers, who is like my right-hand man when it comes to Stoveleg Media,
Right.
he handles a lot of like the written part of the website. Like if you go to stoveleg.com, we have mindfulness articles, things like that. Rick usually handles all of that stuff. But we've had a conversation actually on a podcast years ago about doing, quote, the thing, and how sometimes you have to do the thing even when you don't want to do the thing being whatever you have to do. It sounds funny to say that, but I brought up the point in our conversation that I feel like relaxation is part of doing the thing, because I have seen so many of my friends, work 80 hours a week, 70 hours a week, just grinding and burning themselves out, and they're not giving themselves any time. Oh, yeah, and then when they're off of their job, they want to make more money to go do I don't know what, right? They're just saving money and stockpiling cash, which is fine, but it burns them out. And I see this, and when they're working second jobs, when they're already making so much, and I don't know what everyone's debt situation is, but I gotta think that sometimes it's powerful to just take a step back and relax. Elena, as you know, I am like a content creator. That's what I do, be it voiceover work, be it writing. And a big part of content creation is reading and taking in a lot of content as well, be it listening to podcasts, be it reading books or watching movies or television. And I've been rereading one of my favorite books recently, and it's called Lost Horizon by a writer named James Hilton from like the 1930s. Have you ever heard of Lost Horizon before?
I don't think I have. So I'm really intrigued.
So Lost Horizon is, in my opinion, the best book I've ever read. It is the best book I have ever read. As far as like a novel is concerned, it is so darn fun. And it was turned into multiple movies, I think, back in like the 40s and 50s. It's just a fun adventure story about these four people who are kidnapped on an airplane. Their airplane gets hijacked, and instead of going from, I think, Africa back to England, they end up being shipped to a place somewhere in the in the Far East, somewhere like Nepal, called Shangri-La. Have you ever heard of Shangri-La before?
Absolutely.
So, Shangri-La is something that we use a lot in just our daily conversations. It's in our vernacular. And the idea of Shangri-La when they get there is that everything in this paradise is in balance. So everything that they do is in moderation. They do work, but they also rest just as much in order to keep that balance and live a more subtle life. And the characters that come over there's an older Englishman who is the main character and a younger Englishman who's a side character, and they're two opposite people. One is very reserved, and the other one, the young man, is extremely active, saying like, we have to get out of here right now. I've got a life to live. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to keep moving. I have to keep doing all of these things. And he struggles in this Shangri-La because he is not living in he's living in excess, basically. Everything that he does is to the max without ever taking time to slow down. And that's a big part of the book that I take away. Just being able to live a little more modestly. My highs are balanced out by my lows are balanced out by my highs. And treating yourself, and again, relaxation is a huge part of that. So I would suggest, and some of your listeners probably have read or are familiar with Lost Horizon, but it's a cheap read. I mean, you could get the paperback for probably like $5 or something like that. So it's very, very accessible and a very popular book. James Hilton, one of the best English writers of like the earlier part of the 20th century, in my opinion.
So I'll definitely put a link to that out, and I will find it myself and procure it, and that will be one of my summer beach reads.
It's a quick read too. That's the fun thing. It's a very quick read, and even though it was written like 100 years ago, the wit and the language that they use is very down to earth. It's like normal people speaking, even though it's an English writer, and some of it gets a little Brittany. I don't know what the term is, very Englishy, in the terminology and stuff. It's still written for normal people to enjoy, and that's something that I really like as a creator myself. Like, I'm trying to create things for most folks, and
right.
And that's a big inspiration to me, and trying to live like that with a nice little bounce, like a mimosa or some champagne in the morning sometimes.
Exactly. Well, that actually brings us perfectly to the second thought that came to mind in our original discussion. Remember, I said I had two big thoughts and I kind of went off on one. Taking a break is so important, and that is such a treat. And that's a privilege for some people that, not everybody always has the opportunity to take a break because they do have to work 80-hour weeks to afford to feed their family or whatever it is, whatever that person's situation is. But if you have the ability, I cannot recommend taking a break enough, because for me personally, that is the thing that really makes a huge difference in my mental health.
And that break can look differently for different people. I think that's another big key. We'll see on social media, again, we think of taking a break as maybe like, oh, going to Bali, we're going to this vacation spa, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're getting these high-end spa treatments. That's not everyone's idea of relaxation. Sometimes relaxation, what we can get is 30 minutes of quiet in the evening.
Absolutely.
You get home after a hard day of work, and you get to the fridge after getting home and you crack that first Miller Lite. Like, for me, like that's a fun part of just the relaxation process, the unwinding process. It doesn't have to be a glamorous vacation. Sometimes it can just be a couple of minutes of just pure peace, and that's what we're looking for, right? That inner peace. It's something on your show, Elena, I know, through very hard conversations sometimes, you and your guests are always trying to find some sort of inner peace and trying to make sense of the crazy world around us. So I think that is key. Just understanding yourself and what you need to recharge your batteries, and knowing that that's not always what you see on social media.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're exactly right about that. For me personally, now that I live in Florida, sometimes it's just a Sunday morning. Adam and I get up a little earlier than usual. We pack our breakfast and we stop at Starbucks on the way, because none of the local coffee shops are open on Sundays. Because it's like a small town, even though it's a tourist area, you know. We stop at Starbucks and we go sit on the beach for like 2 hours. And that's so special. And that's such a welcome break. And sometimes we go sit and we do like look at our phone while we're there, but it's something different, right? And then about 2 weeks ago, I was so stressed out at work from other things. I had really overloaded myself. You know, with my extra jobs I take as an artist on the side. I had like multiple commissions. I had all this stuff loaded up, and I was really freaking stressed about that in conjunction with my regular 9 to 5 and everything. And I came home from work early. I said, I gotta go. I don't feel good. Came home from work early, and I put my phone and my iPad away. And I just laid on the couch and stared at the ceiling for the rest of the evening, pretty much.
That's all you need sometimes.
That
right?
was
Just
what I
total
needed.
reset.
Adam was actually terrified. He was like, are you okay? Because I'm like staring at the ceiling with this tiny little smile on my face. And I was like, I feel so great. I honestly do. And I didn't make another decision. He asked me what I wanted to watch when he finally turned the TV on. I said, I don't care. I didn't want to make a decision. I didn't want to do anything. And that was so beautiful, just to have that reset.
Just to be, right? So
Exactly.
often we have to be something else. We have to be so much, but sometimes just to be ourselves. When we re-find that, when we rediscover that that's okay, just to be yourself, and maybe when people listen to this, be it in a week or 2 weeks or 60 weeks from now, whenever, just being able to rediscover your purpose, which is solely to be you, right? Right. Be thankful and give praise and be yourself. That's what we're looking for here.
It really is.
And I think also in our own lives, people, like when I look at your life, Elena, living in Florida, I would hate to live in Florida, personally. And it ain't about the politics, it's about the weather. The weather is, like, it's too hot all the time. Like, I hate the hot weather. I get, like, my skin just burns. I'm like a vampire, right? I need to live, like, in the north where it's cold and dark all the time.
Checks
and
out.
that's where I'm happiest. Exactly, yeah, right. So, but I do know a lot of people back home in Wisconsin, even here in Cincinnati, that would kill to move to somewhere sunny like Florida or Texas or California, and they're just thinking, oh, that's paradise. Like, you are living someone else's vacation.
Yeah.
Well, like when you live in that area, but also it's not just people that live in warm areas that are living people's vacations. Like in your own life, when I look at my friends, I am not blessed enough to have kids yet. Eventually, I'm really, really hoping that I can, start a family and really start growing. And having kids and a wife and a picket fence and all that fun stuff. But when I look at my friends that have kids, I sometimes feel a little jealous. I'm looking, I'm like, oh man, they've got it made. They've got it made. And I look at myself, who doesn't have a kid yet, and I start feeling like I'm missing out. And I, again, need to just understand that I'm running my race at my own pace. And they're doing their thing. I'm sure they look at me and see me at the horse track every other day, and spending my summers in Paris, and they're like, oh no, Nate has it made. And you're always looking at other people and playing this comparative game that only is stealing your own joy. And in that, we're missing what is right in front of us the entire time. And that's another part of the relaxation and resetting, of taking a break, just realizing what we have and how much that is. It sometimes isn't so obvious, but it's a pretty sweet life if you just kind of look under the cover. If you pull away all of the crap that we fill our lives with, it's a pretty special life.
You're exactly right. And, something else that I have always tried to do, and I definitely fell out of it for a while. Most of my listeners that have been around for a while know that around 2020, I went into a pretty deep depression. And I've been really struggling with that, especially since then. And something that I lost during that time was the idea of romanticizing your own life. And I've been really working to get back into that. and I was actually reminded, thank goodness, by like a TikTok, I think, where it said, there's nothing wrong with your life. Stop comparing it to the people you see on TikTok. Well, sometimes there is something wrong with your life, but there's nothing wrong with the simplicity of it, that kind of thing. Stop comparing yourself to the lives you see on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, because they're only showing you the bits they want you to see. So romanticize your own. Think about like how beautiful it is. For example, how beautiful is it that I have this nightstand that has been in the house I grew up in, and now it's in my home? Like, that's such a small thing, but that's my nightstand that I roll over and I put my phone on the charger and my water on every single night. That's so romantic if you think about it like that. Or it could just be just a friggin' nightstand that's 30 years old and I spray painted it,
Yes, yeah.
It's all about how you think about things.
And looking out for, and just understanding in the world, but even in our own cities, in our country, there are people that have so much less than what we do. And I'm sure there are people that are listening to this podcast that have more things than we do. There are people that are listening that have less things than we do, or experiences. But it's important to know that, talking about TikToks and stuff, Elena, are you familiar with when you've seen the TikToks where it's like, ooh, this is giving main character energy.
Yes.
Like, I'm the main character, or I'm the side character. Like, no. You are the main character regardless. You don't have to give main character energy to be the main character. You are the main character whether you like it or not. It's your life.
Yeah.
It's your life.
It's your story. It's your TV show.
But this is a long TV show, right?
It is.
That's where I also feel like the productivity. I don't want to use the word. I didn't want to come on here and sound like.
Say it.
I didn't want to be soft, at least, but I don't want to be like, oh, it's toxic productivity. I don't want to say that, but it's a little bit toxic,
Toxic
to just
productivity.
Like, to be overly productive, to be just grinding through and saying, I have to do this because I'm not going to have another day. I'm not promised this life on earth, and I have to earn every second of it. Yes, that's true, but part of living that life on earth is making sure that you have an extremely efficient life. Because if you burn out and you miss out on being young, for example, if you're 30 years old, let's just say, and you work every single day much more than you need to, let's say work is your life and it's something you don't necessarily care for, but you're just stockpiling assets, and you miss out maybe on that that girl you were supposed to take out, or starting that family, and then you get to when you're 40 and you look back and you're like, damn, am I too late? And you start second guessing yourself, and you start having regrets. At least from what I've understood, when people get to the end of their life, when they're asked about what they regret, if anything, from their deathbed, they never say, I wish I would have worked more. Right? They never, ever, ever say that. They always say something like, I wish I would have spent more time, or I wish I would have made up with this person, or whatnot. But time is a very funny thing, and time, more than money, is a significantly more important asset. It's the only, in my opinion, important asset that we have, the time. And that time is not necessarily only spent with other people. Sometimes we have to give a little bit of that time for ourselves.
That's perfect. That's spot on. And I just want to add on to what you said. Our lives here aren't about just working hard to earn that. It's about enjoying what we've been given, enjoying just this life and this beautiful earth that we all sit on, and not to take this in a terribly anthropological / political discussion.
Let's go.
But it is a very Western concept, largely, that we have to work to earn our worthiness and to earn our value in this life. Because a lot, I cannot say all because I can't speak to all indigenous peoples for sure, but a lot of what I know about many indigenous people on this planet, especially here in North America and in other areas of the world, is that you're just here and you work together and you do the things that have to be done, but your value is not based in what you produce, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
And it is about establishing yourself and making the next generation's life better and easier, and taking care of one another and taking care of who comes after you. But still, your worth is not based on what you did that day, how much you got done or whatever.
No, it's again not a sprint through this. You have
It's
to be
not a
able.
sprint.
I think productivity it's an important thing, and I would probably rather lean on doing too much than doing not enough. Generally, like I still think that being productive is a good thing, and that in the West, speaking of like North America, I'm going to say North America, because people in Mexico work very, very hard. People in Canada work very, very hard. So I'm going to say that it's probably a good thing, because at least we're still creating stuff and we are being the first movers, and we fail a lot here in America in a lot of different parts, but in a lot of different segments of our American lives as a collective. But when I look so this gets to my other, luxurious part of my life, living in France during the summer. I go to Paris, I write, I create, it's fun. I have friends over in France, and I like to talk to them about just life and work and what's going on with them. And I feel like at least the friends that I have there were all French. Some of them are from the south of France, some of them are from the north of France. They've all moved to Paris, and they're working and they're living. And the thought of Americans over there is that we are it's just like a big factory, and we're all putting in, extra long shifts and things like that all the time, which is not true. It's not the way that everyone works. It's not a crazy... I don't think, at least, that the United States is just a crazy machine that's just churning out and burning out workers. In some cases, absolutely, but I think it's not different from Europe. Like, when I look at France, like, my friends are all working extra long through the week, like just as long as we are here in America. But think about the stereotypes that kind of come with the French. We think of them. We see in the news, right? They're rioting about about Macron and the French government extending the working life of the French from 62 to 64 is a retirement age now, or something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
And they're rioting. And you and I actually, Elena, had a little conversation about that on Instagram. And I know that rioting's it's a big part. France does a lot of things great, and there's a reason I spend a lot of time there, and I love going back there. But France also has a lot of problems, right? There's a reason why they had to move the retirement age. A, people are living longer because less people are smoking. But B, they aren't creating enough. They're not working enough. Italy is a country that is in fairly dire economic times. Greece, the same way. These people down there, overall, as a collective, were on the less productive side. And so they're seeing the strain of that now. Now, in America, we work a little harder and we burn ourselves out. So are either countries correct? I don't know. I think also, Elena, you and I spoke about just admitting that we don't know a lot.
For sure.
So when we look at whether should we live more like France and Italy? Should we live more like the United States? Should it be somewhere in between? I think that finding a little common ground from time to time, when the moments arise, because there's a time and place for everything, I think that just being willing to be flexible is an important part
of just looking at the world as a whole from a relaxation standpoint, productivity standpoint, and trying to put that in our own lives as well.
Absolutely. And speaking about an in-between, I mean, I think of the Mexican tradition of a siesta midday, right? You get
Siesta,
up,
perfect.
you do your work that you have to get done, and then you go home and you eat a big friggin' lunch because you deserve it, because you have just worked so hard. And then you take a little nap during those hottest hours of the day. Also, during the time of day when most of our bodies are actually predisposed to take a rest. Did you know that there's like a time of day where our biological clock says we need to rest?
I know that people have talked about the our own rhythm, right?
Yeah, circadian rhythm.
Yeah, and how the workday actually, and I've seen studies done, I don't know if any companies actually do this, but where they've shifted the workday to better match our circadian rhythm.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And I mean, that's basically what that tradition does. You take your nap in the afternoon when your body wants its rest. Then you get up, you go back to work for a little while, and then you've gotten your work done, but you're following the nature of your body. I used to fall asleep in AP Calculus every day of my senior year of high school. I'm not a math person, and that is part of the issue. Math puts me directly to sleep. But I fell asleep in that class. It was at 2 p.m. every single day. I was, first of all, exhausted because you're 17 years old, and that's a really tiring time in life. Mm-hmm. But that was, I started looking it up. I'm like, why do I fall asleep every day at 2 p.m., you know? And I can't help it. No matter what I eat, no matter what I don't eat, no matter what I drink, I would drink caffeine. I would not drink caffeine. I would do like experimenting all the time to try to figure it out. And that is just when my body needed its rest based on my circadian rhythm. That's when it needed a little hot minute of a nap. And I couldn't stop it.
When people listen to this, Elena, are we going to have, like, what do we think that, because I'd like to come onto this podcast and allow people to have some, like, allow them to take something away from this. And I know this is a very non-controversial podcast episode, which is probably a nice refresher for this feed. Sometimes things get pretty heavy. Not so much today. We're talking about just making sure everyone's a checkup from the neck up, at least.
Checkup from the neck up. I love that.
But when people do think about their schedule, their jobs probably don't allow them to take a siesta during the day. Most people don't, at least. I know. And in the future, that may become a more that may become a more common practice. Maybe not exactly a siesta, but something similar to where, hey, look, if you want to take a couple hour break, like, you got to take care of you, right? Mm-hmm. Mental health days, things like that. But eventually, so Elena, during the pandemic, did you ever get to work from home at all?
I did for a little while.
Job?
Yeah.
Okay. But was it for like an extended amount of time, or?
Well, so the job that I had when the pandemic started, I just did that entirely online until the point that I graduated with my master's. So it was not very long. It was just a few months because my job was related to me being in that program, if that makes sense.
Well, so there was at least like a time that you could you were on a schedule, basically. It wasn't just a job you were going to work at for however long they employed you.
Exactly.
So I worked for a company that I love, actually. I'm a big fan of, and I do a lot of voiceover work for them still, called Western and Southern Financial Group. And it's a big insurance company here in Cincinnati, Fortune 500 company, big company. And they do things a little bit old school there. They are everyone's back in the office now and things like that, but you got to wear a shirt and tie if you're a man to Western Southern. When you work there, you have to. I'm not sure what the women's dress code is, but there's a dress code basically for your work. Even though I didn't deal with any clients or anything like that, I was still in that shirt and tie suit and tie every single day. Although I felt like I wasn't in the job that I was working at. It didn't feel like it. It was pretty low key and relaxed where I was at. But when we got to work from home, when the pandemic hit, I felt like my entire world was just shifted in such a positive way. And obviously, during the pandemic, it was terrible. There were people dying, and you can't discount that. But it happened, and I look back and I see that there were some hopefully positive things that we can bring for the future out of the pandemic. And I think working from home, I think, is a net positive because personally, the stress that I had from driving downtown, going into the office, getting up extra early, things like that, it went away. It subsided pretty significantly when I got to work from home. I also found that there were some days that I did not, and I'm sure that I am not alone. Everyone who works from home has these days. There are days where you are maybe logged in, but you sure as hell are not working like you probably would if you were forced to in the office. And you kind of sit back and take a little extra breather, and you don't get as much done. For business, I think in the short term, that can be a little annoying for bosses, right? If they don't want to set that precedent of just doing nothing and getting paid for it. And I respect that 100%. But I think long term, in that if you're able to do at least enough, and maybe there are some people that are working from home listening to this podcast, if you do enough to get by, that's a good start, okay? Overall, you got to make sure that you get done what you can get done. But I think working from home, when you're in that comfortable spot where you can take those little breaks during the day, you've got your own coffee machine at home maybe you've got your couch that you feel extra comfy on or something like that. Maybe you put on your slippers that you feel extremely comfy in. Those things in your workday, if you can take that time when you're working from home, I think I would highly suggest that, bit by bit, unless you're being monitored 24/7 by the company. I think that they're trusting you to get your job done if they're letting you work from home. Take a little bit of advantage of that, right? Don't get fired over it or anything, but make sure that you are doing what you can to prolong your working life, right? Do what you love. Be able to take that breather. And even if you're doing something you don't love, at least relax enough to where it doesn't kill you. Right? I mean, I think that's pretty low to ask. It's not asking a ton to just don't let the job overtake you. Take a little bit of a breather. And we've talked a lot about work on this podcast, and I think that's a good focus for this episode. But relaxation sometimes, like you said, means just getting away from social media sometimes. Sometimes it means getting away from your family for a little bit and just taking a breather, a little bit of space from, mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, or your brother and sister, whatever. Sometimes it means your family. Sometimes it means your partner. Just taking a step away and being like, hey, look, I am really feeling kind of crappy right now. I'm going to go lay down and be by myself for a little bit. Almost always, and I hope always, your partner should understand that and give you that kind of space when needed. And if it's an ongoing thing, sometimes you have to have tougher conversations. But the bottom line is relaxation or taking a break can come in many different forms. And if you keep your mind open and you get away from some of the expectations that the world is putting on you, I think you can live a more independent and free life within your skin. And that's all we got, right? We've only got our own lives, we've only got our own time, and we have to make the most of it. But making the most of it means being efficient, not necessarily always effective.
For sure. That's perfect. That's spot on. And to go with that, I think sometimes taking a break means, for me at my job currently, my 10 to 5, 9 to 5 job, I sometimes say, you know what, I'm going to close the laptop and I'm going to go eat my snack outside. Or I'm going to go talk to these artists and, have a little social break rather than sitting here trying to schedule something or type out these documents that I have to type out or whatever it is. I'm going to take that little break for myself right now for my sanity And sometimes on a larger scale, as you said, it means taking a break from your family and just having like a little alone time. Sometimes it means taking a break from your physical location. And that's something that's really important to me is I get bored. I get bored being I haven't been anywhere for like the 4 months probably since we traveled to...
You get bored of being on a beach, Elena?
Yeah, I do get bored of being on a beach.
I'm sure some people are groaning hearing you saying that you get bored of being on a beach. I personally, again, I don't care for being in the hot weather, but I get what you mean. Sometimes you gotta get away. Come
Right.
home to your old Kentucky home sometimes, or go out west or whatever.
Exactly. And in a few weeks, I'm going to a different beach with my friend and her family. And it's a different beach. Hell, why not? It's a different place. It's somewhere I don't go very often. I go there once a year with her family. And it's just something different. And now, yeah, it is the same exact flora and fauna and Gulf of Mexico that I live in now. But it's just a little something different. I lied. I've been to New Orleans a few times since Christmas. So I did lie about that. But, that's kind of become a second home now, too. So you have to get some variety, is my point.
I see you do spend a lot of time in New Orleans. Is that,
Yes.
what is in New Orleans? I'm sorry if I've missed this, if you've talked about it on
No, it's okay.
former episode. But
my sister-in-law and her husband live there. So,
okay. Excellent.
Yes, we've got the fam, and now, we've been adopted into their friend group. So shout out to all of them. And we honestly party a lot. I'm not going to lie to you.
Hey, when I was in New Orleans last year for the first time, it was a party, and I loved it.
It is. And, we, know people who own bars, and we know people who own art exhibits and stuff like that, and we know DJs and artists and all of these cool people, so we get to go just hang out at artists' house and talk to them and have drinks and have a craft night or whatever. And we go for we usually go for 1 or 2 Mardi Gras parades and hang out for the weekend. And a few weeks ago we went for the Easter parades, and we had a big party in the French Quarter, and we're 2 blocks away, I found out later, from Jennifer Coolidge and where she was standing, if any of my Jennifer Coolidge fans are listening. So yeah, it's just, it's always a fun time in New Orleans. So we do that. But again, that's a nice refresher always. It's a nice little break, but it's kind of become a second home now. So you gotta... It's variety, but still, if you need a break from the normal, I gotta go somewhere else now. Yeah, it's, darn, right? We gotta figure a different beach, a different bayou to find.
Elena, I do want to ask one more question to you, because and I don't want to, make this podcast run too long, but I spoke earlier in the podcast about, just as a man, when I look at last episode or a couple episodes ago, it was about, the modern masculinity. For men today, I feel like in my situation, not being an art curator, just being, just being Nate, when I see these people that have things, that I get bitches, I get this, I get that, I'm doing all these things, I've got this car, I've got this house, I've got everything, I've got bottle service every night. For men, I feel like that's kind of an expectation. We got to be the baller, right? We've got to be the guy. And if you're going to be, in the country, right, in Kentucky or something like that, you got to have the nice truck. You've got to have the big house and the huge fireplace, things like that. Regardless, things and material items become very important, and your job also is extremely important, or it's shown to be extremely important. As a woman, what do you see a lot of girl boss stuff where it's if you're not continuously working and fighting against, the patriarchy and building this, your own personal brand, you're not doing enough. Do you feel that as a woman at all?
I do, to an extent. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought it back to this question and followed up on that, because I was going to say, there are kind of different versions of it for different girls. There's like different aesthetics or different vibes, and you have that girl where she's got the Pilates body. She's
the main character.
Yeah, she's the main character. She's got the clear skin. She barely has to wear makeup. She's got the smooth hair that's slicked back. She's sleek. She's elegant. She's got the bag. She has the body and she has the things, right?
Does she have an Instagram handle? Because I'd love to follow.
Nate, shut the fuck up. And then you've got the girl bosses who have built their empire, and they have the things, but they also have the job and the hard working and the ambition. And now they've built the empire, so probably they've got the travel and that kind of thing too. So you've got those different aesthetics, if you will, that you kind of find yourself maybe identifying with one more than the other or whatever. I kind of identify, I think, more as it should be with little bits of each, but they all put their own pressures on you, whether it is about having the body. Like, do I want the beach girl local aesthetic where you've got the awesome body, you're in a bikini every weekend, you drink rum drinks that probably you didn't pay for because you know the bartender at the local dive bar, right? There's all these different things that you do feel that pressure in one way or another to live up to or to fit into. And it is hard. It is hard. And like I said, I think sometimes that it makes it easier when you don't identify totally with just one of those. So you can kind of pick and choose. At least for me, it does. But, I came to realize that I don't fit that girl aesthetic in the Hailey Bieber sense, where you're wearing all neutrals and you're always in your athleisure and you've got a black Prada crossbody and your iced coffee and your hair slicked back. My hair don't slick back, brother. My hair does not slick back. These curls cannot be tamed like that.
I was just say it's a mane. It's a mane.
It's a mane. So, that's one of those things that you're just like, you know what? I can't fit that. So I'm not going to try to make myself. It probably helps that I have done a lot of work on myself also over the years, and I realize that I can't fit that. But that's just one of those things. And I hope that answers your question, that women, we do feel pressure to fit into different envelopes, different boxes, especially from TikTok or from Instagram or from society, whether you're the small town girl who goes to church every Sunday, there's an aesthetic for that. There's, there's a vibe for that, oh no, I can't go to that restaurant because they serve beer there. Or you're the small town girl that you go out to the parties in the field on the weekend. There are the different boxes that people are always trying to fit us into. So, yes, as a woman, I always feel like somebody's trying to put me into a box.
And there have always been expectations, though.
Always.
This isn't necessarily new. The expectations may change, but our parents went through their own expectations. Our grandparents went through their own expectations. And it's just our job to find our way through balancing out those expectations with our own lives and trying to be happy at the end of the day.
Exactly. Exactly what you said. Our grandparents, our parents, I know things that my grandmothers have told me about, being something or doing something because it was what was expected of them, and the same for my parents and my aunts and uncles. And so, we're always being put into boxes, but treating yourself sometimes is learning when that box doesn't fit you, and learning when the things that box tells you want aren't the things that you actually want.
That hit it on the head. I think this was a productive conversation.
I
mean,
think so too,
it was a
Beth.
relaxing conversation, but ultimately, I'm really excited to be making my official debut on IBT. And you mentioned Haley Bieber, and there's another podcast on Stovelegs Network. Shout out to Kitchen Counter Talks,
Counter Talks.
The hosts, they ended up talking about dislikable celebrities, and they did like a draft because the NFL draft was earlier this week. And,
Hilarious.
I think they did like a draft of, overrated television shows, unlikable celebrities, and Haley Bieber was, I think, one of their second round pick.
Good.
Is she? I don't follow Haley Bieber. Are we not Haley Bieber fans?
No, we're not Haley Bieber fans. No, and
Okay.
if any of my
On
listeners are Haley Bieber fans, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. We're Selena all the way over here, okay?
Okay, we're Team Selena here
Team
on.
Selena.
I'm a big fan of that. I listen to a little bit of Selena Gomez's music, but I'm a big fan of Only Murders in the Building. That show
love that.
is such an inspiration to me. I love Steve Martin and Martin Short, the two of them. And Selena Gomez, at first, I really didn't like her in there. I thought she was a little cold, but then I realized that's kind of her character. And I actually am impressed with the way that she's acted.
Yeah,
and
she's good.
I love that show so much.
It's almost as if acting was where she started.
It almost, right? Yeah, she was, and correct. She was a Disney girl, right? Is that?
Yeah, she was. She was
Okay,
on Wizards
yeah.
of Waverly Place.
See, that's a show that I never watched. I was not a Disney Channel kid once I hit 10 years old. I was all Nickelodeon and Cartoon
Oh, I
Network.
feel that. I really do
I was
feel
I was
that.
all DuckTales and when I was a kid, Chip and Dale
Love
Rescue
DuckTales.
Rangers.
Yes.
And, yeah, it was great, but. Still, I grew out of it pretty quick, and it was okay. Then you hit SpongeBob, and then you're hitting Codename Kids Next Door,
Oh, the
and those
good
fun
stuff.
cartoons. Oh yeah.
I have to ask though, since you were a Nickelodeon kid, were you an iCarly kid?
iCarly was more, yes and no. I watched a lot of episodes. I like Drake and Josh better than iCarly.
For sure.
But I did watch a little bit. My brother, though, who's 4 years younger than me, I feel like he really got in. He was hitting the perfect iCarly age.
Yeah.
When he was a young, probably 10, 11 years old. And I was probably in high school, and we'd watch, the stuff together. But I really enjoyed, watching those. And sometimes when I see Drake and Josh, I'll look back and I'll be was it actually that funny? Was it actually that silly? And yeah, it kind of was. At times, it still holds up to an extent. And maybe it's just we're not too old to where we look back and we're this was freaking stupid. But I do enjoy going back sometimes. It's part of the relaxation, right?
It
Elena,
is.
name, just give me 3 things that make you relax or that help you relax.
Ooh,
What do
3
you
things.
do? Yeah.
Okay, 3 things I do that help me relax. These do not always work. I want to say that. But 3 things I can generally rely on are going on a walk, taking Winnie on a walk, just a nice leisurely one, especially if it is near water. Number 2, I would say, and hold on, with number 1, just getting outside in general, getting outside, doing something outdoors. So going on a walk / going outdoors.
As God intended.
As
right?
God intended, literally. Number 2, painting something entirely for fun. Not something I am intending to sell necessarily, not something that I am doing as a commission, not something that's going towards a greater project. Painting it entirely for fun. Just whatever comes out of me, whatever it is, that can be very helpful for me personally. And number 3, just literally vegging out with a glass of wine and watching some Fail Army videos.
We love Fail Army.
I love
right?
Fail Army. I love it. I love watching people fall off of things.
It makes you feel better about yourself. You're well, at least I'm not that guy.
Right. At least I'm not that guy. And I've got my glass of wine. Maybe I've got my face mask. Maybe I've got my my Chinese takeout, whatever it is. I'm just vegging out and I'm watching people fall on their face, and that's hilarious. Nate, name 3 things that you do.
Okay. First of all, I do not like some people listen to podcasts or music or whatever. I cannot listen to podcasts anymore. I've ruined podcasting. Considering this is my business, I cannot listen to podcasts and relax. I'm always like going through and I'm like, oh, how did their audio sounded a little funky there? They must have cut something and replaced it in or whatever.
Okay, I hate that you just said that. I hate that you said that because I do that too. And I do it too. Yeah. I still love listening to podcasts. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to say this. I still love it. I am a big crime junkie girl. I am just big.
You mean a true crime cast girl, right?
Well, yeah, no, true crime cast also, but like, Crime Junkie was my first podcast love. So I have to say that. And true crime in general, True Crime Cast, Mysteries of the Ohio Valley,
Thank you.
All of those, of course, I listen to them because I love it, because I love the stories and I love getting it's kind of like getting gossip, right? In a way.
Yeah,
and it's also like a devastating story about somebody's life being changed, but there's that too. But I love listening to them. And now I listen and I'm like, oh, they cut that weird there. Somebody said something weird and they had to cut that out. I'm so mad that I do that now. But I'm glad to hear it's not just me. That's my point.
It's part of the game. Like you just you figure it out, and sometimes things stick out to you a little bit. The other thing that I sometimes have happened to me when I learned about like the audio insertion that movies will do. So if you're watching television or a movie or whatever, in a super exciting and loud scene, say like Tom Cruise, for example, in Mission Impossible 90, is running and trying to yell for backup or like a helicopter to survive some sort of big explosion. While the explosions are going off, how do you hear Tom Cruise saying what he's saying into his microphone?
That is
so
a great
clearly.
Question.
You think about that? So if the explosions are actually real, which sometimes they are, they go back and they have Tom Cruise or whatever actor get in front of a microphone and yell like, Luther, I need exfil right now, into the microphone. And then they plug that in to the video to sync up with the lips of Tom Cruise yelling into his microphone. I
had no idea.
Luther, I need help now. So you'll hear that sometimes. Think about it when like loud scenes are taking place. Look kind of at the lips and see how close were they. Sometimes, it's pretty good. It's Hollywood. Like, they're pretty good at what they do. But sometimes it kind of slips up. And it's fairly... One of my favorite shows is Entourage on HBO. And that's a show about treating yourself. But in that show, there's a lot of audio insertion that's kind of off. And I picked up on it quite a bit. So, yeah, I can't watch a television show either. But I do not listen to podcasts. I don't really watch television. What I really love to do is try to adjust my environment. I turn on my television to like rain sounds is what I do, or a snowstorm. I'm a northern boy. I love turning on, even in the dead of summer, like winter ambience and or ambiance, and the winter ambience of like the winds howling and the snow hitting against the window. It brings me to a place where I feel comfortable. It brings me to a place of serenity, and that's probably my number one way of vegging out. And that's not including taking any substances or drinking any alcohol or anything like that. That's how I do it. Like when I go to sleep at night, I don't need drugs, I don't need booze. I just need the wind howling and either the rain hitting the window or snow hitting the window, and I feel comfortable. The other way, it's all through YouTube. I'm still taking in content, I guess, but the other way, I love horse racing. Elena, you know this about me. I'm at the horse track all the time. So what I'll do, I'll go, and sometimes when I feel emotionally built up, this is going to be a little, we're talking about modern masculinity. I'm going to open up and say, I sometimes, as a man, and I try to be a tough guy sometimes, but sometimes I need to cry. It just happens. I do. Sometimes I just feel built up, but like the expectations. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to let it out. I've got too much Irish blood. I'm going to hold it all in. But when I sometimes watch like horse races that like are emotional for me, like big victories. Sometimes I'll watch the horse that I own that won back on St. Patrick's Day. I'll watch that rerun. I watch races that I already know the ending to, but I love the story. Like be it my favorite horse, Essential Quality, winning the Belmont Stakes in 2021. Like I'll go back and watch that, and sometimes I get a little teary-eyed. Or when I watch like the Kentucky Derby, intense a little bit, but I already know how it ends, so it's not really that intense for me. Some people probably watch their own television shows that they've watched 100 times.
Yes.
New Girl. I'm sure there are plenty of people. Oh, Bob's Burgers, How I Met Your Mother for some people. But for me, yeah, it's watching old horse races that really gets me into just an emotional and happy mood. And then the other way that I would say is I enjoy video games. I like playing video games. I'm not very good at playing video games, but I feel like sometimes I can unwind. I like trying new versions of art. I'm working on a new version of art right now, kind of an audio drama, and I think I've mentioned a little bit of it to you, Elena.
I think you have.
We'll talk more after the podcast ends, but I enjoy taking new mediums of art in, and video games I never thought of it as art before, but I find that more and more often new indie video games. I'm not talking about Call of Duty. I'm terrible at Call of Duty. I'm not talking about Madden football. I'm horrible at Madden football. I like playing them, but I'm just not good. Right. But I'll try indie games from indie developers that may not look the most, they may not be the most stereotypically pretty, lifelike video game, but a lot of it's art. And if there are any video game fans out there, I'm not an Xbox guy. Thankfully, I have access to an Xbox, though, and I played a game called Pentiment, 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 maybe? I don't know. I'm not very good at spelling, but I played the game, and it's basically drawn, the whole animation series is drawn like a Renaissance painting. And it's about a murder that takes place at an abbot back in like the 1600s. And Martin Luther is on the rise with the Protestant Reformation and all sorts. It's a very interesting story, and the art is beautiful, and it's a different way of telling stories. And I think that if you get away from looking at video games just as Tetris or Madden football or Call of Duty, there are some really good stories that are told through this medium. And I like taking in stories in kind of a play as walk through the story kind of way. And there's another good one called Kentucky Route Zero, which is very similar to Pentiment, where you're not playing a video game so much as in you're just going through a story. And I really like those kind of games to help me unwind a little bit. It's like reading, but not quite like reading.
Right.
It's a new way of taking in some sort of tale, and that's enjoyable for me. So that's probably my third way that I like to unwind.
I like that. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book or movie.
A little bit,
because you're interacting with the story, but you're not having to tell the story for yourself.
It's already been written out for me, and that's what I want when I listen to, when I watch television shows. I don't want to have to necessarily work for it. I want it already to be created for me. I want to hear someone else's perspective other than my own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why I listen to this podcast so often.
Thank you, Nate. I so appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully it's why the listeners are here, too, to hear these differing perspectives.
Yep.
And I hope very much that you all have enjoyed listening to Nathan and I absolutely going on roundabouts about the different ways that we treat ourselves and the different versions of it and our perspectives on working hard and hardly working and everything in between.
And yeah, here's to a fun summertime. I hope everyone can find a little bit of time for themselves when the weather turns nice, and hopefully it's not too hot for you unless you're into that kind of stuff. But I hope everyone has a great summer. And Elena, when we gotta kind of do another circle about on the I think we could really dive into a couple more subsets in future episodes that we've talked about a little bit on this episode, be it like the expectations that we have in our world around us.
Could.
Unlikable celebrities. I think we can get into that too. There's just so much going on, and I can't wait to have another conversation with you.
I can't wait to have another conversation with you either, Nate. Thank you so much always for being here and for bringing me to
igniting
Stoveleg.
Conversation.
Yes,
right?
For igniting conversation. So thank you, everybody. Nate, tell us where we can follow you and find you.
All right, you can follow me if you want to learn about horse racing, if you're like an intro, or if you want an introduction to the sport, if you're a beginner and you're like, you know what, the Kentucky Derbies and the Triple Crown season's going on right now, I want to get into horse racing. My Twitter account, at Nate Metz, NateMetz. That is where you can find me, unverified. I know, but there may be people out there. I'm not paying for Twitter, but I do like still using that platform, and I do find that you can find me there probably best out of anywhere. Instagram, the exact same handle. But other than that, make sure that you check out other Stoveleg podcasts. Elena's is a huge acquisition for our podcast network. Just trying to grow, trying to bring in more, especially Kentucky voices. We'll bring in voices from all over the place, but I like voices from the Ohio Valley especially, and Elena being from old Barberville, right?
Barberville.
So is that how you say it? Because people up in northern Kentucky say it Barberville is how you're supposed to say it, but I just Barberville is how I normally say it. I was trying to pay
Barberville or Barville.
Barville, that's how they say it.
Yeah,
Barville.
Barville.
Okay, so I butchered it still. But I still need people from the Ohio Valley, from Barville, or from Pikeville, or from Augusta, or Cincinnati, wherever, to keep igniting conversation and building up these voices from the inner part of the United States. But Elena, thanks so much for having me on. Can't wait till next time. Until then, let's keep igniting conversation.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Nate and I. He is absolutely incredible. As we said, go check out his podcasts, check out Mysteries of the Ohio Valley, check out True Crime Cast, check out Reformation Abroad, his brand new storytelling podcast where he and his buddy Rick, another Stoveleg Media member, they wrote this incredible story about prisoners in outer space, and it's really cool. So go check all of those out. They're Stoveleg Media Productions, and you can get them wherever you get your podcasts. Now remember, as you're listening to I've Been Thinking, go give us a follow. At I've Been Thinking Pod on Instagram, I've Been Thinking with Elena Grace on Facebook, www.I'veBeenThinkingPod.com for our blog posts, for more information about us, all that good stuff. And again, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure while you're at it that you give us a share and you recommend us to a friend. You honestly have no idea how important just sharing us, recommending us is to the growth of this podcast, okay? That is literally how it works. So tell somebody they need to listen to us, and maybe even tell like 5 people, and we'll be able to produce even more and more content for you, which of course Tyler and I would love to do. Speaking of, go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/I've Been Thinking Pod. Not only is there extra content on there from me, there is also going to be more content on there from Tyler coming up, which is super exciting. I'm really excited to see him creating more on his own for you guys because he does really great stuff. All right, guys. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll talk at you next time. This episode of I've Been Thinking is hosted by me, Elena Grace Campbell. It is edited and produced by Tyler Miller. This episode was guest starring Nate Metz of Stoveleg Media, and we are proudly presented by Stoveleg Media.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
It's important to properly dispose of unwanted medication or sharps. MedProject offers free and convenient disposal options near you. To learn more, call 844-MED-PROJECT or visit medproject.org.